Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome to another God of War video. Today, still coming off the incredible story trailer from this week's State of Play, I wanted to catalogue every single enemy we've seen so far and document them as we draw closer and closer to the release date of Ragnarok. We will be going over the promotional trailers, covering each and every single enemy involved in them, as well as where they come from, as we've seen a lot of interesting enemies that we will meet during the twilight end of the gods. But, as always everyone, before we do kick things off here, I'd first super appreciate it if we could get this video to about 500 likes. It might seem like a small thing, but it really does go a very long way. Not only for this video, but this channel out as a whole. And if you like what we do here and wish to see more God of War content, please don't forget to subscribe and finally tick that bell. Now, let's get right to the video. So first, let's take our gaze to the world of Midgard, focusing our attention on probably the most well-known enemy type in the Norse series, the damned souls of man, Draugrs. So far, we've seen about 3 classes of Draugr. The first and most common is the standard adept class, one that wields a singular blade in combat that does have the ability to enchant it with a flame. We then have the return of the classic dual-wielding class, seen in the very first Ragnarok trailer holding 2 battle axes. We then finally get our first but very brief look at the heavy assault class, one that was swiftly featured in the father-son trailer. Now, this could be me possibly looking a bit too deep into things, but from that trailer, that the heavy class explodes on contact with Kratos' shield, possibly hinting at a new hybrid class that was crossed over with a previous existing one. Our next and somewhat new enemy type is the Centaurs. It's sadly only very briefly seen, but from what we do know of it, is that it's referred to as the Stalker, and it utilizes a rope dart to tether and pull enemies in. But currently, we don't know much else about them, or if there is any relation to their Greek counterparts, who Kratos has of course battled in previous games. But judging by this one's very unique design, this may simply be a very different version of an already established enemy. So with Midgard now covered, let's turn our sights to that of Svartalfheim, the world of the dwarves, and nearly immediately we are introduced to a completely new faction of enemies, the Grimms. The Grimms are a reptilian type species that seems to be native to the realm of Svartalfheim. So far, we've seen a normal standard assault class, where they utilize their teeth and claws, but we have seen a slight variant of the species, as there is one that does projectile vomit acid from their swollen gut. Our last and final version of the Grimms is one we saw in last year's trailer, and as you can see, he is a big lad, being much larger in size, weight, build, and stature. This, in a way, may be Svartalfheim's equivalent to Midgard's own ogres. But that's not the only new enemy type introduced here, as we have also encountered the Dreki, yet another incredibly large reptilian enemy type. But unlike the Grimms, the Dreki is a beast that is exceptionally close to that of a dragon. Even its name in Old Norse translates to that of dragon. Now, tragically, much like the Centaur, we've only had very brief glimpses at what the Dreki does. But from what we have seen is that the Dreki doesn't exclusively reside in the world of Svartalfheim, as we see a different colored design in the most recent story trailer, bearing green markings opposed to the brown with red highlights. So I think this may hint at them being predators that adapt and camouflage to their surroundings. Let's next shift our sights back to a realm we are all familiar with, Alfheim. And quite a bit of time has passed since we were last here, because after defeating the king of the Dark Elves, elves, and freeing the light elves. It looks like now the light elves will be the predominant and main antagonists of this realm, continuing their long-lasting blood feud with their dark counterparts. So far, we've seen the Light Elves come in two different variants. The first is from last year's reveal trailer, showing off a single unit that carries a very long katana-like blade. Another is quite similar in that respect, but wields two blades, opposed to the one we've seen. Sadly, we don't see much else from either of them here to kind of gauge how exactly do they approach combat differently. But with the Light Elves being visually and physically much different to their brothers, lacking their bug-like wings and features, it intrigues me to see how different they are to the rest of their kin. Of course, with that being said, it's not like the Dark Elves are entirely out of the picture here, as we see them in their catacombs, and even most recently in the story trailer. Now, it doesn't look like too much has changed with them, as they still retain their ability to fly, fire projectiles, and obviously stab you with their spears. The only difference I've noticed is that there is one that has a different staff, meaning that there might be more melee-focused classes and more projectile-focused ones. But that's purely speculation on my part. Let's now turn our sights to the fiery depths of Musphelheim, because whilst we may have the only one clear shot here, it does introduce us to a completely new and mind-boggling enemy type, the Flame Phantom. As of making this video, there is still very little information about how this elemental functions, but going off its unique design, I believe it does softly imply that the Flame Phantom may be one of many different elementals that do exist throughout the 9 realms, taking on the characteristics of wherever they reside. So I don't think the Flame Phantom is exclusive to that of Musphelheim. Now let's turn our gaze to the realm of the dead, Helheim. Much like Musphelheim, we have unfortunately seen very little of the land of the dead, only really getting our first look during the Father-Son trailer and the most recent one. But much like the elves, it doesn't seem like much has changed when it's come to the Hellwalkers, because so far we have seen the standard Hellwalkers and shield bearers. Again, nothing much, but still something I feel was worth pointing out. Our next and new realm is that of Vanaheim, and we do see quite a fair bit of it here. Now, our first and most obvious character to touch on here is Freya of Vanaheim. Currently on the hunt for Kratos, the former mother of Baldur is on a bloody warpath against her former allies. Believing that blood demands blood, she falls into the fated cycle of vengeance Kratos has so desperately attempted to sway from. But with the goddess having reclaimed her blade, as well as actively seeking out her Valkyrie wings, it goes without saying that the clash between the Olympian and Vanir goddess will shake the very foundation of Ragnarok. Now we are introduced to a completely new beast in the story trailer, one that's so new that, well, unfortunately, not even Santa Monica has name-dropped what this is. So sadly, there's not too much to document about this behemoth, only that it is on the larger side of things. I have been leaving the best till last, and that is the Asgardian variety of enemies. And mind you, we've actually seen a lot of them. Starting off here, we do have the Einherjar, the sacred chosen warriors from death within Valhalla, now serve Odin in the end days of Ragnarok. We've seen 4 different variants so far. The first is your standard foot soldier, one that simply carries a mace into battle. But from the most recent trailer, we have also seen that there is a projectile focused class, one that carries crossbows and tosses grenades. We then get a more heavy assault class, one that utilizes a great axe. He is only seen for a very brief moment, but he's definitely quite different to the others in terms of design and frame. And then we finally have the Black Knight class. Just a note that this is not the official name of this specific archetype, but he's so distinguishably different that I had to single him out here. Clad in a dark metal shell and wielding a scythe, this very well could be the boss variant of the Inherdia, as his distinct appearance and very unique weapon does make him stand out from the rest, having an intimidating demeanor to his design. We then next get everyone's favorite secret bosses, the Valkyries. Our time spent with this duo is once again very short, but they do make quite the impression, and that's probably from everyone's PTSD. Now visually, these Valkyries do look very similar to the ones of the previous game. However, we do know that Kratos and Atreus were successful in freeing them from their mortal forms. So, who could this be? Were these the ones from before? Well, that is incredibly unlikely, as you would suspect they would be in direct opposition to Odin, and the dead still roam the realm of Midgard. So the two we see here are more than likely completely new Valkyries, which isn't really unheard of. Whilst the game established the original 9, we know that Odin is not only able to bring them into literal life from nothing, but he is also able to bestow someone with the wings of a Valkyrie, as we have seen with Freya. He's quite infamous for doing this with shield maidens in Norse mythology. And since we're touching on mythology, in the Nordic texts, there are about 23 different and unique Valkyries. So the two we see here could be 2 of the 14 that we are yet to have met. Now, of course, finally, we have Thor and Odin, the Bloody Bastard and the Mad King. It should go without saying just how significant and important these two are to not just this game, but Norse mythology as a whole, as the pair are the final 2 to fall in their own mythology, with Odin trying to bind Atreus to his will, and Thor taking a much more upfront approach. God of War Ragnarok will not only be a battle of strength, but a battle of wills amongst the gods. It's just a matter of who will survive, and whether or not the prophecy of Ragnarok will reign accurate to that of its Nordic texts. But for now everyone, that has been it for this video. A quick honourable mention here of the mermaid as well as the giant jellyfish. Currently, neither are yet to be framed in a villainous light, so I've purposely left them off the list here for the time being. But hey, what's to say that can't change? Time will only tell as to what's going on with them. That's been every recorded enemy that we currently know of or have seen from God of War Ragnarok's promotional material. I'm sure there's plenty more on the way, as well as returning enemies. So again, I hope you have enjoyed this video and learnt more by doing so. But for now, that's been it for me. So as always everyone, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting as Ragnarok comes for us all. Take care everyone, I'll see you soon.